So you probably missed a step. A pin came out, you turned the key in the lock, a top pin fired into the core. Maybe you see a spring, maybe you can't turn it, and guess what? It's fine. Don't worry. Relax.
I got this.
All right, we're going to get this fixed for you. So essentially that is exactly what happened. When there was an empty available spot in the bottom of the lock and it was turned to the top pin pushed down into that available empty space, and a little bit of the spring that pushed it down is also sitting in the core. And the reason for that is that we did want that top pin to push all the way down in the bottom so that you could rebuild it if this happened. And that is the reason why, if you look, you probably have a little bag of springs as well in that tin. Not probably, you do. Take a look and you'll see there's about half a dozen little springs for fixing problems like this. Just depends how deep this problem is. If it's one pin, okay. If it's all five, hey, that's also fine. We're going to get this all working. So the next step is to get the keyway turned. And we want this turned 90 degrees, a little bit of degrees, whatever it is. We just don't want it straight up and down anymore. We want to get it slightly turned, because once it's slightly turned, I know that I can also push it out of the lock. Now, you might actually not be able to do it with the key in, so see if you can do it with just the tip of the key. But once we have something like that, we know we can push out the core. So if you can get it like this, you can move to the next step. If not, what you probably actually have to do is pick the lock to get it there. So take your tension wrench, take a pick, and start picking that lock open and get it so that it is slightly turned. That is where we need to get to for the next step. Once it is turned slightly away, if you look on the back of the lock, you're going to find a cap like that. And there is also a little pin that sits there. I'll actually show you on this one. What you need to do is, if you have one of our other sets, you might have a resin plug follower. You want to undo that tail cap. If you don't have one, listen, it doesn't take much. Just push down that pin and turn that cap off. Once that cap is off, you are now going to push the core out of the lock. And it might take something like a drill bit that you've got at home to push it through, a wood dowel, even a marker, but we want to get that out. Once that is out, you're going to find a host of things. You're probably going to find some springs that look like this. How many? I'm not sure. Just depends what you got going on. And you're going to have a whole bunch of pins. So now we got to start getting things organized. You can see them right here. Let's get them lined back up with the key in the proper order. And we know we have them in the proper order when the top of the pins all make a nice straight line and the rest of the pins at the base are touching the key. So there we can see we've got our 5 bottom pins all in a line. So let's get a closer look at the difference between a bottom pin and a top pin. So bottom pins are sitting on that key, and to help them move along that key as it's pushed into the lock, that's the key pushed into the lock, the pins, put this here so you can see it a little better. The pins have a little point right there, and that little point is what rests on the key. So when you are loading these into the lock, take a look for what is the slightly pointy end, and because of the sidewinder and its special window, that's just going to drop in like that. Now the top pins, this guy here, more barrel-like, and all the top pins, there's another one, are going to be identical in terms of height, and you can identify them a little bit because they do not have that pointy end. These guys are going to sit on that shear line inside the lock, and they don't need a pointy end because the key doesn't ride on them. So when they're sitting in the lock, those ones are actually sitting up there. So these are the ones that you're looking for that you are going to load into the shell. Here is a sidewinder that I have taken apart. So you are at this stage right now where you've removed the core. Inside the lock, we've got that series of holes, and we are going to take springs and drop them into the first 5 positions. I've already done so. But grab your pins, grab your springs, and go ahead and start populating those first 5 holes that is towards the keyway side. Very handy to have tweezers for this. They don't have to be these special ones with the formed tips. Whatever you've got at home, use those. If you don't have them, you can pinch 2 of your picks together and use those as tweezers, like so. Clearly not as much fun, but that is what we might have to do to get this rebuilt. Then once you have your springs, you are going to take those top pins and put them into place. Now this is where it gets a little more interesting. We also want to be covering those top pins as we're putting them into place. So you have your core, keyway side, the holes you want turned away. You're going to drop the pin in. A little bit of pressure from the core holds it into place. Then you push it down on top and slide it forward. You grab your next pin, rinse, repeat, put it into place, tap them on the head, slide forward. We're going to do that for all 5. Once you have all 5, turn the keyway, but when you turn it, please make sure that you turn it away from the top of the lock, because else we'll end up in the same position that we're trying to fix right now. Then turn it all the way around to that available window. Once you get it to the window side, grab your bottom pins, load them in there, and your sidewinder is fixed. Didn't take much, teachable moment, and there you go. With a little bit of work, your sidewinder is back and operating again. And just remember, going forward, anytime you take out a pin, you're going to replace it again, or you're going to end up with that same problem of having a spring come down. And if it happens, you now know how to fix it. And that is the Sidewinder by Sparrows.